NBA season is coming to a close. We got one more series to close out what has just been an incredible NBA playoffs. A lot of incredible storylines, a lot of excitement. Of course, injuries is going to be maybe arguably the number one thing people talk about when they remember these playoffs. I'll remember it because, Steve, you and I hit our stride in player props. This has been a real eye-opening postseason for me. I really see the potential with all the player props that are available. We found our streaks and hopefully want to close out on a winning note. But we're going to do our Bucks Suns preview. We're going to go over a lot of things here. We're going to go over some legacy things, some interesting storylines, player prop previews, team previews. And at the end, Steve and I are going to give out our best bets for the series. So I encourage you guys to take a listen. We've put a lot of work into this, and we're excited about it. All of our NBA Finals plays can be found at the link there. You get series plays, player props, game props. Get a 3-day package, 7-day package is the best way to get all of the plays. So, Steve, let's start with superstar-driven finals. This was a topic we wanted to go over. We wanted to talk about how this is kind of a strange one. Is Chris Paul the biggest name? I think that's pretty easy to say coming into this finals. But is he a huge name in NBA? Does his name carry the weight of a lot of the other guys that we're getting ready to talk about?
I don't know that it does. I mean, looking back on some of these finals superstars and MVPs, the LeBrons, the Currys, the Jordans going back to long ago. But, I guess Giannis could creep into this conversation depending on his injury and health status. Chris Paul, he's a great player and he's looking to cement his legacy here, but I don't know if he's quite the superstar that we've seen in some of these other finals.
Well, let's go back to 1990 and let's just list the MVPs. And I mean, these guys are legends for the most part. So we'll go back to 1990. The MVP then was Isaiah Thomas. And then you get a run with Jordan, Hakeem, Jordan, Duncan, Shaq, Duncan, Chauncey Billups, which, boy, that's probably the best comparison for a potential MVP if Chris Paul wins it. Just a brilliant point guard, really cerebral. And then you go Tim Duncan, Dwayne Wade, Tony Parker, Paul Pierce, Kobe, Dirk. And then you hit your LeBron, Kawhi, Iguodala, which is always the weird one that stands out, right?
Yeah, but even that year, Curry was the main force on that team. But
yeah, and then we go LeBron, Durant, Kawhi, LeBron. So Giannis is out. And Chris Paul is probably the biggest name that's left. How many of those guys that I mentioned before would you say Chris Paul is better than?
I would say Iguodala, Parker. I'd say so 2 or 3. So Iguodala and Parker, I'm going to give CP3 the nod over those two. And then I'd say him and Chauncey, that's a close race. So, I'd say 2, maybe 3.
Yeah, and I think the point that we're getting to from it's a great series as far as basketball lovers are concerned, but I just don't really know if this is going to have the huge star power. I mean, this is a guy who might be most known to casual NBA bettors from his State Farm commercials and Cliff Paul and some of those. So this is a very, very odd dynamic that we have going in there. I don't think most casual NBA knowers would recognize Devin Booker. Definitely not Chris Middleton, even Giannis. I don't know if most people would recognize his face if you showed it to him in a lineup. So this is a very non-superstar if you take out CP3, correct?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, like you said, Giannis, I think he's verging on one of those well-known superstars. Obviously, if he was to win the title this year, he would be put into that class. But with his injury status and his health concerns, I'm not sure that he even plays, especially early in the series.
Well, we're going to get to him big time in the Legacies because this is unfortunately shaping up to be a really bad legacy playoffs for him. So this one's fascinating me. Interesting storylines. I love a couple of these that you came up with. So tell me about a couple of the interesting storylines, kind of behind the scenes, just fun ones.
Yeah, I got a couple of really cool ones. Just with Chris Paul, as far as him kind of coming full circle with his head coach, Monty Williams. Monty Williams' first head coaching job in New Orleans with Chris Paul. So just kind of interesting that these two careers have been intertwined together so much. And then the second one is just awesome. Torrey Craig for the Suns. He's getting a ring either way. So he played 18 games to start the season with Milwaukee, which this could make him a secret weapon with the Suns in this series. Maybe he knows a little something that he can help them out with. But I just kind of found it funny that regardless of which team wins, Torrey Craig is going to be getting a ring this year. It's amazing.
He would become one of my favorite players if he would just release a video like an hour before game one of him popping champagne. Just one kind of interesting guy, and it's a guy that I didn't know you were a big fan of, but I've always been a big fan of, is Jay Crowder. This is a guy that played for Miami in the last playoffs in the bubble, or the last championship series in the bubble, and here he is. And I love guys like this because, you know, okay, he's not great at three-point shooting. Sometimes you cringe when he shoots it. This is a guy that always hustles. You always know he's going to care. He's going to fight for every rebound that's anywhere near him. He's not going to be scared to guard anybody, for better or for worse. He thinks he can guard everybody. He's an enforcer down low. He's not scared to get mixed up with it. And he's one of those guys that I think teams completely miss out on when they say, well, we're one piece away from a championship roster. Like, nobody thinks to go get that bruiser, but can have a game where he hits 3 out of 5 3-pointers. And you watched him in Boston, and I think you and I would both agree Boston misses him dearly. And here he is paying dividends for a team like Miami and then a team like Phoenix, right?
Yeah, I love me some Jay Crowder. I mean, when he was with the Celtics, he's just one of those, like you said, hard-nosed, gritty defensive players that, I mean, I'll take him to build a championship team any year. Give me a couple superstars and a team full of Jay Crowders, and I'm looking good. You know, I've always been a big fan of his. I kind of bummed when he left the Celtics, but we get to see him here in the finals last year and this year, so that's nice.
Yeah, and the storylines, we have to touch on the injuries thing. Are you in the camp of, well, you play who you get in front of you and you just have to fight through the injuries? Or are you saying, well, this championship's a little tainted because of all the injuries? What's your opinion on that?
I wouldn't say it's tainted. I mean, because, you know, any year that you look at, there's going to be injuries. You could point to this team lost this player, or this, you know, this player was injured and was unable to play in the finals, and it changed the course of things. Now, this year is a little bit different. So many superstars getting injured this season, and that's the big storyline here. Obviously, with does Giannis play? Is he play in full effect? I'm not sure. You know. But
let's get to player props preview. This is where we made our money. This is our bread and butter going through the playoffs, and hopefully, we showed to a lot of people, hey, this is a great spot in the NBA playoffs where you can pick your spots and really cash in on some of these player props. It's a weird one without Giannis. We don't know if he's going to play. My initial feel, I'm going into this series thinking he's not going to play. I know they said no structural damage. I think they were going to say that on just about anything. I just don't see how you hyperextend your knee that bad, and then you come out and you play in an NBA Finals. You brought up an interesting point that at some point he may try and go, but I go back to watching Anthony Davis when they sent him out there with that groin injury, and it was just hard to watch. He played a few minutes and just couldn't give it a go. If you're Milwaukee, I don't know why you would risk it. So I'm going to go into this thinking there is not going to be any Giannis. What's your take on player props and getting ready for the series?
So I tend to agree with you about Giannis. I mean, and I think it's baked into the line in game one, -6. I think that if he's playing, you know, we're looking at a -3, maybe a -4, something along those lines. So I'm assuming that they're thinking he's not playing game one. I can't imagine him not trying to give it a go at some point, right? But is he effective? I don't think he's gonna be effective if he does play. And based on player props, I'm assuming that he's not playing. You got to start looking, just initially to start things off, you got to start looking at guys like Lopez and Tucker for the boards, potentially even Middleton. With those guys, their rebounding numbers have went up huge without Giannis out there. So that's one spot that I would, just to start, that I would look at.
Yeah, we also liked fading Booker on some of these points, rebounds, and assist props. As we're recording this, there's no total points, rebounds, and assists, but you can get a pretty good idea of what the number is going to be before tip-off because they do have the points total, they have the rebounds total, and they have the assist total. And boy, Devin Booker likes shooting the ball a lot. Chris Paul was getting a lot of the assists. We saw his assists go under. We saw his rebounds go under a little bit. I think we're leaning a little bit more towards Devin Booker, some of these unders, right?
Yeah, especially this is something that we've talked about, his under for rebounds. He's not going to want to go in there with the broken nose and get re-injured, or he doesn't want to stick his nose in there. And I think with it being the finals, maybe he pushes it a little bit, but yeah, I'm leaning towards under for rebounds with him, and I would actually look at assists potentially too, because his points, he's going to shoot, that. So
yeah, and when we're looking at player props, and this is going to segue into team previews, we look at the minutes that the Milwaukee Bucks starters are playing without Giannis, and it's 35 minutes plus for all of them. Connaughton got real hot in Game 7, and they left him in there, and it's understandable. And Teague hit a few shots, so they left him under there. We talk about just the availability of these guys and the opportunity. And if you've got guys like Tucker, perfect example, Tucker in the last game, he was having a horrible shooting night, and yet he still got over his PRA just because he was out there for the whole time. And so talk about the minutes that we're possibly going to see from this Milwaukee team.
Yeah, without Giannis, we're going to see a ton of minutes out of those top 5 guys. Like you said, we saw that in the past couple of games. They're running pretty thin without Giannis. Like you said, Connaughton is kind of like the one guy coming off the bench, maybe a little bit of Teague and Forbes, but you can't really rely on them for too much right now. So we're going to see a ton of Middleton, obviously Holiday, a ton of Brook Lopez, a lot of PJ Tucker and Portis as well.
Yeah, Portis was a really hot commodity. He came under his total, but we have an interesting dynamic under the boards. We liked Ayton a lot last game, but we liked it because Capella was compromised there. He had the eye injury, and that was, Collins was doing it. Giving a full effort down low. A lot of respect for that guy, but let's face it. He just doesn't quite have the size to be operating at that center power forward position. Milwaukee's a different animal when you're going up against DeAndre Ayton. Ayton's going to catch the ball, and he's going to have Brook Lopez and Portis, and Tucker's, can be annoying as we get. What do you think with DeAndre Ayton? We loved his overs, and we cashed a lot of them. I'm almost looking that maybe Ayton gets a little bit under some of these, especially in the rebounding department.
Yeah, he might get lost in the mix a little bit. He's got a lot of bigs to go against with the Bucks, and as far as points go, he's very reliant on essentially Chris Paul and Booker getting him the ball. He's not a player that's good from the free throw line. He's not creating his own shot. He's really reliant on a lot of those alley-oops and putbacks. So especially now, if he guards Lopez and he gets pulled out from underneath, that's going to make his rebounding go down drastically as well.
That's a great point. Yeah, Lopez can pull you out or go inside with you. And yeah, if they want Ayton away from that basket, they'll be sure to get him out there in some pick and rolls. Let's sneak into team previews. Do you put a lot of emphasis on the bench, because Phoenix is going to have a big edge, huge edge for bench players? That being said, we're in a best of 7 series, so maybe Milwaukee says, We only got 7 games for the rest of the season, guys. Go out there and do it. Meanwhile, Phoenix is going to be running Cameron Johnson if he's feeling better, and campaign, and they can just rotate Bridges in. Saric can spell Ayton. Torrey Craig can come in. Is this an advantage for Phoenix in the finals like this, or do you think they just let the stars take over?
I feel like the Suns are quite the deeper team, so I think that could be an advantage as far as guys getting a little bit of a breather at points and stuff like that. But the Bucks don't seem like they're going to be afraid to run these guys into the ground. And at some point you could see Monty Williams tighten up their rotation as well and kind of just stick to their 5 to 7 big players. So, it's not a huge advantage, but it's definitely a check mark in the Suns side of things.
Yeah, small advantage in case there's foul trouble. They have a couple more guys, to rely on. If you get into some early foul trouble and Lopez gets 2 quick ones or Tucker gets 2, that could be a problem for Milwaukee. If Ayton gets a couple of quick ones, it's not that big of a drop off. They've got some options with lineups. Maybe it swings a game or 2. Let's talk legacies. I think the 2 biggest ones are obviously Chris Paul, we've talked about, and Giannis. I'm going to start with Giannis. I don't want to say you root against your own team. This is a bad look for him if they somehow win this series, right? Is this worst case scenario for the Giannis legacy?
Well, obviously the injury isn't his fault. You know what I mean? But I just personally, I'm kind of jumping ahead. Without him, I don't see them winning the series. I don't know if it'll matter, but yeah, what a bad time for him to get hurt, though, right? It's just brutal. It's tough spot for Giannis there.
I think they look great without him. I like the way they move the ball. I like what I've seen from Holiday. I think they're quicker. I think the ball stops with him. Obviously, his athleticism is unparalleled right now. He's sometimes it looks like a men amongst boys out there. It's like, how did he get from the free throw line to the basket in half a step? But that being said, Lopez is no stranger to being a force inside. We saw that in Game 6, and Middleton, if he gets hot, he can absolutely catch fire and win. So, be a tough one for Giannis if Brooklyn or if Milwaukee brings home a title and he's not playing in it. And here's the thing: if Milwaukee's playing good and Giannis says, "I'm ready to play," what do? You bring him back?
They're going to let him come back if he's ready.
Yes,
to play.
Of course.
They want him to come back. And that was a great point you made earlier when we were talking about this stuff, is that with Middleton I loved what you said right there about how he's a guy that's going to win a game for the Bucks probably lose a game for the Bucks as well, right? I mean, he's when he gets hot, it's unbelievable, but sometimes when he gets cold, he can't hit anything. I think Giannis is going to give it a shot at some point. I don't know if it'll be in Game 1, but expect to see him out there at some point.
Chris Paul, is this a must-win in the series for him to cement his legacy? What do you think?
Oh, it sure is. This is everything to Chris Paul. This is his legacy on the line right here. He's not going to get a chance as good as this. There's no guarantees. Everyone knows that. And, he's been with a lot of different teams. He's a lot of different chances to get there. And, he knows how big this is for him. This is Chris Paul's series, let's face it.
Yeah, I agree. I think Chris Paul is already seen as an all-time great. This would just push him over the edge. It's strange. I think if Giannis comes back and Milwaukee somehow ends up winning, I can just see people like, Milwaukee, everyone was injured, but Chris Paul is so loved by everybody. I think they'll be like, well, you got to just play whoever you play, and what a great win, and he fought through adversity, and it's kind of the eye of the beholder, right?
He needs that ring, though, right? I mean, it's a lot of guys. You look at a former Phoenix Sun, Charles Barkley. He'll always get razzed by Shaq on set that he doesn't have that ring, right? It's just getting one of them elevates you to a different level. It's crazy, but it's true.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's wrap it up. Let's put a bow on this thing with our series best bets. Steve, I'll let you have the floor. What is your best bet?
So I'm loving this one. I'm going to go Suns win Game 1 and win the series. It's negative 125, so you're essentially combining a negative 180 and a negative 240. And I think that if the Suns are going to win the series, they're going to need Game 1 for the most part. I expect them to win Game 1, especially with them having the rest advantage and the Bucks dealing with this Giannis situation. So give me the Suns win Game 1 and win the series at negative 125.
I really like the Milwaukee team. I enjoy watching them. I actually, from a basketball standpoint, I actually kind of like watching them better without Giannis. I think the Suns win this series, and if the Suns win this series, I think there's 0% chance they do not give Chris Paul the MVP, especially with him getting completely flummoxed in the season MVP chant where he was, hardly mentioned, even though he, took Phoenix and now he takes them all the way to the finals. So if Phoenix gets the win, Booker would be the only guy on that team who you could possibly see getting in. Like we said before we started recording, Booker would have to go for 30, 12, and 10 in order to get that MVP away from Chris Paul. It's going to be an interesting series on the perimeter with Jrue Holiday out there. Chris Paul is so smart. I think he's just going to figure out a way to attack Milwaukee. And at some point, he's just going to be too cerebral and he's going to outthink him. And if he does, it's going to be a Chris Paul love fest and he will get the MVP at plus 175. So, all right, there you go. Our best bets, Chris Paul MVP at plus 175. Steve likes the Suns to win game 1 plus the series at minus 125. All of our picks can be found at WagerTalk.com. Good luck. Let's close out this NBA playoffs with a bang. It's been profitable for us so far. Don't forget to follow us and all of our picks at WagerTalk.com. Good luck and enjoy the finals, everyone.
Enjoy the finals.